A, and 35, let's put that in for B. And if we were to crank the numbers on this, we would see that yes, indeed, first we're asking the question, is 12 squared plus 35 squared equal to 37 squared? And if you plug it into your calculator, you realize that yes, it is true. This equation is true. So therefore, this must be a right triangle. Therefore, this must be a right angle. Therefore, this segment is tangent to the circle. Whew! Here's a little more complicated one. Thought that was hard. Wait one second. You are ready now? And I would recommend, yeah, why don't you go ahead and do this one. Do number 7. Do number 7. Is segment DE tangent to circle C? Okay, so here is the center point C. Here is circle C. And they're asking us the question, is this segment DE tangent to this circle? Good question. Well, if it is, then we know that it's going to be perpendicular to the radius that goes and touches at this point of tangency, this point D. So this would be your right angle here, and this would be a right triangle, and so therefore the Pythagorean theorem would be true for the lengths of this right triangle. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we are asking the question, does A squared plus B squared equal C squared? Okay, so what is A? What should we plug in for A? Well, let's plug in 3. Right, that's pretty easy. And what should we plug in for B? It's going to be 4. And what should we plug in for C? And here's a number out here. And so should I plug in 2? Is 2 the value of C? No, wait a second. C is always the largest one, right? So, and let's do this. Let's get up on here. C is always the largest one, right? So shouldn't I plug in 4 for my C? And the answer is no. Because remember, if this is a right triangle, this is going to be where the right angle is, and across from that is your hypotenuse. So this guy has to be the longest side, and we can kind of see that. But then wait a second, why are they saying it's 2? So is 2 the length of the entire thing? And the answer is no. 2 is just the length on the outside here. Okay, but if 2 is the length of the outside, what's the length of the inside? Well, going from the center to the circle, that's a radius, right? We got that. So this is also a radius. This one's 3. So what do you think the length of this radius is? Of course, it's going to be 3. So the entire length here is 5. So 5 is what you plug in for the C. And then you can plug in 3 for the A and 4 for the B, and then crank the numbers, and you're asking the question, does A squared plus B squared equal C squared? If it does not, then DE is not tangent to the circle. If it does, then DE is tangent to the circle. See how that works? Okay, and let me do one more example. Here's another one, and this is a little more difficult. So here is our diagram, and see what's happening here. What they're doing is same concept, but now they do not give us what the radius is. They do not give us what the radius is. All they do is give us that variable. And they're asking the question to find the radius if this is, segment AB, is tangent to the circle. So in other words, what would the radius need to be in order to make this segment tangent to the circle? So I have my A squared plus B squared. I have my C squared equals A squared plus B squared. I got that. So what is the length of A? Let's call it R. We plug that in for that. What is the length of B? Plug in 80. So what is the length of this hypotenuse? Well, let's call it 50 plus R. We know that this 50 refers only to this outside segment because you can see the other leg is 80. So obviously this one is the 50. The hypotenuse is going to be the longest side. So the 50 refers only to this outside segment. So we know that R is going to be at least 30, right? It has to be more than 30 because 30 plus 50 is 80, and the hypotenuse has to be larger than the longest side. So let's plug in R plus 50. The length of this hypotenuse is r plus 50. So there's your equation. And r plus 50 squared equals r squared plus 80 squared. And we need to solve this now for the radius. So let me just take this r plus 50 squared and then bring this over here, just so you remember how you square a binomial. So if you had 3 squared, how do you square that? It would be 3 times 3. Well, in this case, we're doing r plus 50 squared. So to do that, instead of what you do is the same principle. You just take this same thing and multiply it times itself. So take this r plus 50 and multiply it times itself. So now we have 2 binomials. And you remember to multiply these binomials. No, leave it here. Multiply binomials will distribute the r first inside the parentheses. So r times r is r squared. R times 50 is 50r. And then let's distribute, I don't have a black pen, but then let's distribute the 50 inside the parentheses. So 50 times r is 50r. 50 times 50 is 2,500. And so now I can add like terms. 50r plus 50r gives me 100r. So what all that I've done here is just reduced this r plus 50 squared down to r squared plus 100r plus 2,500. And that's what they have up here in this part of the equation. And so now all that I do, now you might be panicking and say, wait a second, r squared terms? Is this a parabola? Are we doing quadratic formulas? So crazy. But notice that you have 2 r squareds, one on the left, one on the right. So you can subtract r squared from both sides. Whew, these guys cancel out. I can also subtract 2,500 from both sides. And now we're getting pretty simple. Now we have 100r equals 3,900. Divides both sides by 100. You know how to do this. Remember, you can cross out the zeros there. So r, and also over here do that. And so r equals 39. That wasn't too hard. Yeah, it sort of was. But I wanted to walk you through it. Now that you know it, you can do it on your own. So that's what they're asking to do. That's what they're asking for you to do here for this problem. So you're going to have r squared plus 24 squared equals r squared plus 18. No, I said it wrong, didn't I? R plus 18 squared, right? This is your hypotenuse. This is your value of c. R plus 18 squared. And then multiply r plus 18 squared by doing 2 binomials and distributing the r and then distributing the 18 inside the parentheses. And then down here, this one here, all it's saying is that since we do know these are tangent, we're told that they are perpendicular, therefore they're tangent. Therefore we know that when they contact out here, these 2 segments are going to be congruent to each other. So your equation is going to be x squared equals 9, and then just solve that for x. Okay, hope that was helpful to you, and may the Lord bless you, and I look forward to seeing you in class.